driver Kasey Kahne and his colleagues at Evernham Motorsports, Evernham. That's a good reaction, huh, guys? Do you get that at the racetrack too? Oh wait, you guys don't have a microphone. Oh, stand up. Technical difficulties. Problems. Here you go, we're gonna get you a microphone. Till then you can borrow mine. Kasey, we've been doing this for a while now. This AllState pit stops, they're good fun, but they're also a good opportunity to get out a great message.
Yeah, for sure. It's you know, team safe driving is something that everybody needs to think about and talk about, so that you know, if it's on your mind, you'll do a better job of thinking about it when you're actually behind the wheel. And it's you know, it's something that when I was growing up, it was definitely something on my mind. And you know, I've always raced, so speed hasn't really been a factor to me outside of the race car. I enjoy going fast on the track, but when I'm you know, in a street vehicle, it's all about the speed limits, and that's always been fun. So it's something that we all have to think about. And regardless, myself, anytime I'm on the roads, I buckle up. I am very careful when I use a cell phone, and definitely text messaging is not good to do at all. That's probably the worst thing to do, I think.
It is absolutely amazing to think that people would try to drive and text message at the same time. But the other day, it was a coworker of mine that was talking on one cell phone and text messaging on the other one and driving with his knee. And I said, if he didn't hang up, I was going to get out of the car. Now, Ray, you're involved in a pretty scary business. You put your buddies in race cars and send them out on the racetrack at 200 miles an hour. But that's probably nothing compared to putting your son in a passenger car for the first couple of times as a teenager.
Well, Ray J is still, he's not actually there yet, but I do worry about that day. He's grown up around the sport, and he does know about the seatbelts and safety, but you always worry because so much can happen. You know, I always tell people, these guys are going 200 miles an hour. They'll be close to 200 miles an hour here at Talladega on Sunday. But you know, when you're going the opposite way of somebody coming at you at 50 miles an hour, it can be pretty devastating. So with only inches apart, sometimes you're more of being a daredevil on the road than these guys on the racetrack, because everyone's going the same direction. So it's just so important to pay attention, like Kasey and John were saying about being on a cell phone or text messaging, or paying attention to road signs and traffic. I mean, the whole key to not having, it seems like an accident, or at least avoiding one, is paying attention. Most accidents are caused because somebody really wasn't concentrating on their driving.
Ray said something years ago that kind of stuck in my mind. He said, not only are you putting an employee in a race car or a driver when you're a crew chief, but you're putting one of your best buddies behind the wheel, so you wanted to make sure you had the best technology and the safest race car possible to put him in.
Well, absolutely. I'm responsible for him. He came to drive for my team about 4 years ago now, and you know, it's part of my responsibility to not only make sure that he wins races and that he becomes all that he can be, and someday hopefully a champion, but to make sure that he's protected. And I have to deal with my guys. You know, they build a good safe car, but I make them look around inside that car, seatbelt seats, because I don't ever want to see a driver get out of one of our cars with a bruise that he shouldn't have gotten, because his safety is ultimately our responsibility.
Kasey, we saw you in that video just a second ago take a pretty hard shot. I forget what racetrack that is. You probably remember where it is, but tell the folks out there, it is no fun to hit a wall at any speed, is it?
No, it's not. You know, it's 5 years ago when I was racing sprint cars, we didn't have balance devices. We didn't have, you know, the seats that we have now and the safety that we have now. It's came a long ways in the last 6, 7 years. So, you know, for me to switch to that stuff and hit a wall now compared to back then is so much different, but it still just takes, when you hit hard, it takes everything inside you out. I mean, and you need to catch your breath for a second. You need, you know, it rings your head. You get headaches and things. So, I mean, it's part of racing, and it's much safer than it used to be because of all the safety devices and things that we have now. But it definitely can take everything out of the inside, and you just have to sit there and think about it for a minute until you catch your breath.
What were the conversations like between you and your parents? First of all, when you started racing anything, and then after that, when you took the wheel of a passenger car?
Well, the biggest thing when I started racing was being careful and being safe. And when you're racing, I mean, that's the last thing on your mind is to be careful. But at the same time, you want to finish every race. So you know, how do you finish and go as fast as you can, as hard as you can every single lap? And it took a little bit of time to figure out, and it still does at times. You do things that you probably shouldn't have and put your car in the wrong spot. But you know, I always talk about it with my parents. They never forced me into anything. They always said, you know, if you don't want to race, do something else. There's plenty of things to do. So it was always kind of my own decision, and I enjoy that part of it. And what was the other part?
What was that? You answered it fine. I was just saying, certainly your parents were concerned when they put you in a race car, and also in the passenger car, maybe a little bit more for the passenger car than the race car.
Yeah, the passenger car, actually we had an old farm truck. We lived on 50 acres, so we had some cows and horses and a little bit of a farm. And so we had this farm truck as a 73 red truck, big truck, and it had a flatbed on it. So that's what I got when I turned 16. I turned 16 when I was in 9th grade, the very end of 9th grade. So I was one of the first people in my class to have a license. And from there out, I usually drove. Like, it didn't matter. If my other friends were, if once they did get their license or what, I usually was the one that drove, and I just felt safer. I felt like I focused a little more than some of my friends, and you know, we need everybody to focus as much as you can when you're in a street car, because things can happen so quick.
Hey Ray, now you were a heck of a dirt track driver in your day before you became a crew chief. A lot of people might not know that you had skills as a driver, so you know these cars inside and out. Tell the folks, if you can, a little bit about what the physics are of driving any type of race car, because I don't think people understand how violent an activity it is to drive down the road in a car, what you're really doing as a human being.
Well, I wasn't really a great driver, otherwise I'd be sitting where he was sitting. But I did have a lot of fun and did get some experience. But you know, as I said, the physics of driving that car, you're moving a lot of weight down the road. You know, you're moving something that weighs a couple of tons, and it doesn't stop immediately. It takes a lot of power to keep it going. And you have 4 little tire patches that are the only thing that are the contact of the road there. So any kind of a little rain, a liquid, anything like that can break traction with that car and make it start to skid, whether it's snow or ice, or it could be just sometimes when you get a little rain and oil on the road. You have to be very, very aware of the road changes and just how heavy that car is and the speed that you're traveling and distance that you leave between other cars. I just want to go off base for just 1 second and tell you about these things are important to me, very, very important, and even more so now. I have a friend who is another racer. His name is Doug Herbert. He's a drag racer. And some of you might know that name because of a terrible tragedy that happened about 3 months ago or so, or 2 months now. And Doug lived in our neighborhood. He had his sons, 17 and 12 years old, were riding in the same car, and they happened to be speeding, and they had contact with another vehicle head-on, and they both lost their lives. And it was a terrible, terrible tragedy in my neighborhood, and every day we still ride past those skid marks, and we still ride past the little memorials. You know, it's something that absolutely didn't have to happen. And it haunts Doug, and Doug is out doing things on the road. You might hear from him or hear about him. He's working with teenagers now, so these kind of things don't happen. But there's, you know, the perfect example of how fast something can happen. And in the racing family, when something like that happens, we all rally around and try and help. And the only thing that we can do is say, look, this is serious. You know, it's fun. I know that some of you girls, it's fun to see Kasey and come here. Yeah, it's like that everywhere we go. But you know, take one thing out of here. You know, driving is a privilege. It's not a right, and it comes with a tremendous amount of responsibility, because your life and the lives of many people around you can change in an instant if you weren't being responsible. So I would have not felt right if I didn't come here and tell you about Doug and his children, and hope and pray that maybe we can avoid things like that from happening in the future.
And that goes to back to what we said just a moment ago, that not only are you responsible for yourself when you're behind the wheel, but your parents, your friends, your neighbors, your classmates, just think about them. If you're going to make a stupid move, stop for a second and think about this. What effect did this have on my family? And what effect did this have on my friends?